Alrighty, good morning. First off, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't say wow, but whatever. Anyway, so today we're going to take a look at mitigating against brute force attacks. I have updated the content in today's lessons just to make the images a little bit more relevant, so you can grab the latest content from the files in the Learn module. But the differences are quite minimal. Feel free to take a look. We're going to, as I said, talk about brute force mitigation because we've seen this in the past that if we don't put something in place, people can just keep hammering our site until we get in. We saw that with the Mr. Robot attack at the end of last semester when we were able to use Hydra to attack the website until we were able to figure out the username and the passwords based on a custom dictionary. This is a very real world problem, and it's something that you need to be able to mitigate against in your site. So we're going to modify our login scripts accordingly. Unlike previous classes, I'm not going to give you a block of text that you just say, well, this goes here. You're going to have to understand your code and where you need to add the blocks of text to your code. I'm still going to give you the code to use, but it really does depend on how you implemented your login script. It will be the login script that we're modifying today. We shouldn't have to touch any files other than the login script. So let's take a look at that. Our blog application has been set up to protect against SQL injection, and we've given ourselves an access control system as well. But what we haven't done is implemented a brute force mitigation issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Hydra to attack our website, which is why in the welcoming notes today, I asked you to fire up Kali for today's class. Now, strictly speaking, you do not need Kali for today. Strictly speaking, you can do the attack against your site manually. Okay? However, there is value in having Kali running. Okay? Also, we're going to attack our admin. It doesn't have to be admin. What's far more important to me is that you attack somebody who is around 20 users down the list. Okay? One of the quirky things about Hydra, well, let's just take a look at this right now. I'm going to go into Kali to show you what I'm talking about. Fire up a terminal, and I'm going to take a look at the password dictionary that we used in the past. In our case, it's the rocku.txt file found in user share word lists. So we're going to do head-20 so we can take a look at the first 20 users. The first 20 words in our Rocku dictionary. And we've used this. We've used this dictionary many times in our pen testing last semester. If you set up your admin account with the password, it might be okay, but it might be a little too quick in response. It's probably okay. It's the fourth one down. We're going to block it if it's anything after the third, but I've seen it not work properly. So what I'm going to do is, after I have my Debian up and running, I am going to go into the browser. I don't even know where I have this running. There we go. Oh, no, I selected you. You should have stayed selected. There we go. Okay. Yes, I'm still here. I'm going to go in and I'm going to register a new user. The user I'm going to register, I've already done. I'm going to register admin2 and create an account. So when I take a look at my database and I look at my users, I have an admin2. And when I set up the admin2 users by using my own registration page, I ensured that the password was something further down in the list. I chose QWERTY only because I know it's 20 down in the list. It just makes the testing a little bit more predictable. Alrighty? You, of course, can do whatever you want. You can make sure your admin is not the password. The problem is, and this is why I added a new user rather than modify my admin account. The only way you can modify, and this is critical, and I want everybody to understand, the only way I can modify my admin account is to delete it and recreate it. When I delete it and recreate it, the ID changes, and you might not be able to change the ID back because it's a primary key, and you probably shouldn't be changing primary keys. So if you change your admin by deleting and recreating, you have to go into the role users table, PHP RBAC users roles tables, and this is the one where you set up the relationship between the user ID and the role ID. Now you did it programmatically, but if you go into members and you change the ID of the admin account, then you have to change it, the ID in the users roles table that you're using for PHP RBAC. So if you change it here, you need to change it here, and it's the user ID for the role you created, which was the admin role, which is probably role ID 2. Okay, again, your system may be different. So rather than dealing with all of that, rather than dealing with any of that, I said, you know what, I'm going to create an account specifically for testing. So I went into my browser and I registered a new admin account. I called it admin2, and then I set up the password QWERTY. Then I had an account that I could test this theory out with. Any questions? Now that I have an admin account created, now that I understand what a threatening password or a valid password that I could threaten that with, I am actually going to test it. We just talked about that. We're going to actually use Hydra again to try and attack this. We're going to use the same password, for crying out loud. We're going to use the same dictionary as we did before. The admin that you login you're going to go for is the login you've just created. For me, it's admin2. All right. Obviously, the IP address needs to be the IP address that you're using for your target Debian. The path to your login needs to be done whatever you're doing. I do everything in one page. My login and check login are all one page. If you've got a check login, if you've got a separate check login page, you need to reference that here. All right. If you used username and password as your form names, then my script is okay. If you use something else, if you used user pass, again, you must understand your environment and you must understand how to test it. Okay. So I'm going to try testing this now. I'm going to type in Hydra, and there it is. I've already typed it in, so it's showing it to me. But here's my admin, here's my RockU. That's the IP address of my target machine. And we're going after HTTP post form. As I said, I've got the same file for both the login and the check login. It's all in one file. And you know what? Let's take a look at it so you can understand what exactly I'm saying, because I'm going to need this in a second anyway. So when I go to my login page, if they've passed a password, I try and log them in. If they haven't set a password, I display the login form, and then the login form just calls itself. All right? The file is called login. The action that this form calls is itself. And again, if it calls itself, then it is going to have a password. Okay, so that's what I've done. I've put it all in one. But if yours says check login here, then the URL here is going to be that check login. /blog/check login. If you're making copies and you're working off of copies, some of you I've seen you have blog 1 and blog 2 because you've got different versions. That's fine, but make sure you identify it properly here. Okay? When you take a look at my form, my username is called username, my password is called password. So I reflect those in my script. And I did the -V so I can actually see what happens as it's running. So when I hit this, it will start going through and testing passwords. And once it gets to, again, that magic QWERTY password for my admin2, I succeed in logging in. All right? This, of course, is a problem. We need to mitigate against this. So, how do we do that? Well, the solution is actually something I've been mentioning to you many times in the past. I explain all of the arguments here. I continue to explain them. What we're going to do is we're going to mitigate to this by allowing users to do 3 attempted logins, and if they fail, they will be locked out for 15 minutes. This means that we need to capture that information associated to that user. One of the best ways to do that is to modify the members table to capture that information, to capture the number of attempts before they successfully log in and a timeout. And if both of those conditions aren't being met, then they don't get to log in. So they have to wait 15 minutes, or they have to be under 3 attempts. It's a case of both of those failing, all right? If it's after 15 minutes, but it's more than 3 attempts, well, that's okay. We'll let them try again, okay? But we have to have both of those attempts, okay? Because we need to capture this information, we need to modify our database to reflect those changes. So we're going to add a couple of fields to our database. Now, where did I get this from? I've mentioned this time and time again. I got this from DVWA. Now, you don't need to do this, I'm just showing you. There is a vulnerabilities area, and then there is a brute, and in the source. And then there is the impossible.php. A lot of the ideas I got from here. A lot of the code I got from here. And I showed you, time and time again, I showed you DVWA for this very reason. We have an issue with brute forcing our login page. We have a solution in the DVWA code. Let's take a look at that solution and implement it in our environment. And that's what we're doing today. We have a potential solution. We're going to see if we can make that work for our environment. So all those times I told you, DVWA is great because it gives you solutions to problems. We're actually going to implement one of those today. Let's see what that looks like. First things we need to do is to modify our database and add those 2 columns. And they should look something like this when you're done. Okay? So let's see what that looks like in our database management system. I'm going to go back to my members table. I have an email field, but you can ignore that for today's purposes. I'm going to select the fields, and it's on this screen here that we can add new fields. The easiest way to do it, there's an add new field link right there. You can also drop stuff or edit fields or what have you. The easiest way I've always found it is just right click, new field. And we need to create 2 new fields. I suggest last login and failed login. So let's do that one. Last_login. It needs to be a date time type. If you scroll down, there is a date time. Not date, not timestamp, but a date time field. It's just a basic date time field. And there is a default value. And we are going to set the default value to now. That's a built-in function in most database management systems that just says, okay, what's the date time right now? We'll set this value to that. Okay? So, I also say make it not null, which means by clicking on not null, by clicking on a default value of now, whenever we create it, it will populate it with the current date time stamp. as you see here in my presentation. I made it not null, I made it now, and then it looks something like this once we complete that. So you click on OK, and then you tell it to execute the SQL statement. Boom. We also need to add an integer to keep count of the failed login attempts. So we're going to add a field called failed login. Right click, new field, we're going to call it failed underscore login. I recommend you use the same column or field names that I do, that way the code that I have supplied in today's lecture works better. Okay, integer is fine, default value is not necessary, frankly not null isn't necessary either. Okay, we don't need to set that up for this to work. We're just going to set that up and click on OK and execute. So now our data looks like this. It grabs the current date timestamp as to when I set this up, and it has a failed login. Again, I also have the email, but we'll deal with that probably next week when we get into creating a proper registration page. So we'll deal with that in the future. Don't worry about it right now. The important thing is we've got these two fields added to our environment. Or what's a little bit easier to see, after I ran these two add new fields wizards, my output, in your output, will probably look like this. ID, username, password, last login, failed login. Last login should have a value of the moment that you created that new column. It should be populated. And if it isn't, we can deal with that later, but it'll cause some problems when you go to log in the first time. Okay, so you should be good to go. We have modified our database. If you don't have last login values, you just need to go in and select a date timestamp. All right, so what does that look like? Well, if I don't have a value here, I can actually select a drop-down list and just set a date and time. It'll default to now, and then you'll be fine. If this is tricky, you can also go to Form View, scroll down, and just select the drop-down arrow and select now. It doesn't really matter, so that those fields actually have values. And then you click on the green check mark to actually commit that setting. So you can actually go through and set values for the ones that you want to test, if they are null. They really shouldn't be at this point. If you created that the way I said in the handout and the way I showed you in this, everything should be fine. Okay? So we've got that done as well. We're going to need to modify our code. And as I said, if you've got a separate script from your form, then you need to modify that. You will know this because you have tested it with the brute force attack. If you did what I did, where you put everything in one form, then that's the file you need to modify. And as I said, I got this solution from DVWA, so we can go take a look at that. That's one thing I forgot to mention. DVWA isn't perfect. We've talked about this before. I've closed it down, so let's go take a look at it again. I closed it down, so I'm going to open it up again. One thing I don't like about this right here, select star from users. Now I don't know if they did this so the code would be portable towards other environments, but as we said before, we shouldn't be doing select stars in this context because it creates a result set that, if the user can somehow see that result set, might exfiltrate some data. Also, if you ever talk to a DBA and you're developing a database component for an application, if you ever talk to a DBA and you say, I want to do a select star, they will tell you, please don't do that. You should only ever select the fields you need. So DBAs hate this, and information security people hate this. I have a feeling they included it so that the code would be more portable to other implementations. I really don't know. But this I don't like. This line 53 in the code I do not like, but it does not invalidate all the other stuff that was done. Okay? as I did last time, that's explaining what we've done, the basic modifications to the database. What we're going to do now is to move on to taking a look at the Word document from today. So we're going to now, we've already done this first bit. There's only a couple of pages here. It's a pretty quick edit, so you'll have lots of time to ask questions and follow up. But we're going to go ahead and start making these changes. But as I've said, you really need to understand your environment. Because I'm really happy with where everything is right now, I'm going to make a backup of my blog. I'm going to select blog, right click, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to make blog underscore backup underscore 17 November 2021. Okay? Just because before I start making any changes to a functioning website, I'm going to do a snapshot backup. Okay? Go ahead, and now I've got a backup. Perfect. I don't need to do anything with it. I really shouldn't do anything with it. What's more important is I keep working on my original blog. But if I do something disastrous, I have a backup that I can fall back on. I like doing this. This is my approach. Of course, I'm not going to follow up with you to make sure you have a backup, but that's what I do. Now that I have my backup, I can start modifying my code. Now, I don't give you big pictures where everything goes. I just tell you what needs to happen. So you, at this point, need to understand your own code. For me, it is going to be in the login file. So, I'm going to go back into blog, and because I have a single login file, which has my login PHP and my login form HTML, it is in this single file I am going to make my edits. So, the first thing we need to do is we're going to take these variables. There's three variables. Is the total failed attempt is a maximum of 3. The lockout time is a maximum of 15, and that's going to be minutes. And we're also going to set another variable called account locked, so that we can check to see if the account is locked going forward. It's going to default to false. If those conditions happen, we're going to change this, but we're going to need to check it before we start messing that variable, so we need to set it to false before we need to do that. So I'm going to highlight those, I'm going to copy those, and I'm going to put those at the beginning of my code somewhere. Alright? I could put it up here, but if there is a password, I'm going to start doing it right here. There's my OB start for session management. I'm going to put those values probably right below there. That's probably a good spot. If it doesn't work, I'll fix them later on. Okay? There's the user username. Okay. So we need to check at this point the current login count. If the login count is too high and the last time they logged in is too recent, we are going to set the login to failed. So we're going to need to take this entire block from the table, and if the timeout is a problem, we set the account locked to true. So this is one huge block of code. We're going to copy that, and before we even try and log the person in, before we even try logging them in, we're going to test to see if the account is locked. So I add it after my checks that I have. Those are variables I can manage, and before I start trying to log in. Before I log in, I check to see if the account is locked. Okay. We also need to make sure that when they go to log in, we need to check to see that the account status is still false. Okay? Where we do our check, which is the next block, all right? This next block here is where we check, and if their check password, if they have successfully logged in, then we let them log in, okay? However, that's not enough. If check password, and I'm going to add this as well. Also, check to make sure that the password isn't null, and also make sure that the account isn't locked. And that's what we were doing up here, seeing if we should lock that account. But because we're testing it here, we need to make sure that we set that variable ahead of time. That's why we set it way up here, so that we don't throw a warning of testing a variable that doesn't exist. So we need to modify our, hey, do we get to log in statement? I'm going to highlight that, copy it, and I'm going to change my if check password to include those extra tests, and that the password is not null, and that the account is not locked. If all of those conditions are true, we will let the person log in. Okay? Also, we should reset the login count. We also need to change the failed login count back to 0 because they've successfully logged in. So every time they successfully log in, we set the failed login count to 0. So we need to add that as well. Copy it. Before we do that, we need to reset the back. You have successfully logged in, so let's give ourselves a line there, and maybe give ourselves a line there. We've reset our count. Now, if something's wrong, we need to increment our bad login field in our database. So we need to run another query against the database. Update the failed login where it's equal to failed login plus 1, where the username is equal to the username, limit 1, and then execute our code. So, wrong username and password, below the wrong username and password, before we close the bracket, after we say you've entered the wrong username and password, before we close that, we need to do that. Also, we should modify our warning to say that the account is locked. Now, normally, I don't believe in being that specific. However, it is unfair to the student, or to the end user, I should say, that if you're going to lock the account but not telling them that that's a possibility, then you should give them some warning, okay? Something like that, whatever you want to do, okay? So those are the edits that I want to make. Oh, we have one more to do. And we have to keep track of every time that they try and log in. We have to set the last login to the moment they try and log in. Regardless of whether it's successful or failure, we always want them to let us know when they try to log in. So we're going to capture that block as well. And we're going to put that probably before this, all right? I'm going to add it right here, because here's the block of code that fails the login. Here's the block of code that successfully logs in. Regardless of whether they successfully or failed to log in, I need to say, hey, you have logged in somewhere. All right, and you can do it around the OBN flush statement. That's entirely up to you. Okay, so we can save that. Click on Control S to save your edits. And before you test it, you should try logging in. Okay, So I'm going to home, I'm going to log in as admin2 with the password QWERTY. I'm going to log in. You have successfully logged in. I'm going to go home. That looks good. I'm going to verify in my database. I am going to refresh the data, and it's now set a failed login. I wish I could zoom in and show you this. I'm sorry that I can't. But it just shows my last login being within the last minute, and my failed login is now 0. So it's updating my database. Brilliant. I haven't done anything else. So I can go back over, log in, and I can retest my brute force. All right? And we're going to let it run, and don't let it go crazy. Let it go past 20, up to 100 is probably fine, but it hasn't succeeded in logging in. And there's no warnings going back to Hydra saying why. Hydra can't figure out what's going on. And when I check my database and I refresh my data, it still has the last time it tried to log in, and it has 139 failed attempts. So clearly somebody's trying to brute force this account, right? And it's not working, and that's the important thing. It's not working. So if I go over and I log out and I try logging in again as admin2 with the password QWERTY, all right, your account is locked due to too many login attempts, all right? Now, you can leave this here, all right? But when it comes time for you to do your competency, I do not want it. This I do not want to see. This is too much information. This allows hackers to exfiltrate data. This is fine. This is even fine. I normally don't want to see something like that, but I think it's fair to let your users know that they've had too many attacks. Please wait 15 minutes or whatever. I don't care where you have those warnings. That's entirely up to you. You guys need to start making these decisions. But this, that's fine. This, that's fine. I do not want to see this time information. You've already said the account is locked for time. This is academic information for us to understand what's going on as we're trying to debug our code. Academic and work related. I don't want to see that. Okay? Perfect. My account is locked. My brute force mitigation is working as expected. Perfect. I can now go back and try logging in again by changing the date time stamp. This is the easiest way to do it. Click on it, select the drop down arrow, and set the date to yesterday. If you set the date to yesterday and click on OK, and then click on the green check mark, the last time you logged in was yesterday. It doesn't matter how many accounts there are, it was yesterday. So now, when I try logging in again, and all I'm going to do is Control R. You want to try again, boom, you have successfully logged in, and boom, you're now in the system. Okay, so that's how you test your brute force mitigation. Run a pen test against it. I suggest using Hydra. It does HTML forms and PHP, scripts really well. So I recommend using that. And we've used it in our pen test last semester. You can brute force your account to make sure that you get locked out, and then you can try logging in through your browser and confirm that you are locked out. Change the date time stamp in your database to the day before. Try logging in again and you should get in. So now when I refresh my data, that's the time I logged in and my account is down to 0. All of those are an indication that we have succeeded in implementing a brute force mitigation code in our scripts in our code, or code in our scripts, however you want to word it. Any questions?
Stephen,
I'm sorry, Muhammad and then Ebi. Muhaddin and then Ebi.
Stephen, I am a little bit confused. In our last login, you changed the date,
Yep.
previous day, and then successfully log in.
Yes.
This scenario is applicable always for attempt to fail login.
It's always, because I don't know if you recall this or not, but the test that we're trying to do, I have a slide on that, but I've closed it down. Damn it. The test we are trying to do is not the count. There it is. Both of these conditions must be true. If both of these conditions are true, then you fail the login. All right? Even before you try and log in, you fail the login. Okay? So, if the account or the count of failed logins is 3 or more, and if the lockout time is less than 15 minutes, if both of these conditions are true, then I'm not even going to let them try to log in. Okay? If the account is less than 3, or if the time is less than 15, I will still let them try and log in. Okay?
Sometimes in real world scenario, that is, some user maybe try to log in with wrong password,
Yep.
account lock, then administrator reset their account. So you just act like reset the password, right?
You can do a password reset. That's an option. That's not something I incorporated into the script, but that's something you can do. But we haven't really done the code to resetting passwords here, because that's a whole other thing. And frankly, I'm not going to have a chance to get into resetting passwords. You are right, that's a valid thing. But to reset a password, what you have to do is you have to have more than one password field in your database. And once you start allowing people to reset passwords, are they allowed to reuse old passwords? How do you track that? And that opens up a whole other thing. You no longer store the password only with the username in the members table. You create a password table as well that has the user's old passwords in and a date timestamp. So, if they're allowed to reuse a password, but they can't use that password in the last 2 years, then you have to track when's the last time they used that password, so that after that time has expired, you can allow them to reuse that password, or you don't. There's a whole bunch of other things, and because there's a whole bunch of other things, there's a whole bunch of extra code you have to do. So we don't really get into it. It adds a huge degree of complexity. But you're correct. In the wild, if the account is locked, you give the person a chance to reset their password, which means you have to have a valid email. And we're going to do that next, which is when we get into the proper registration page. That's going to be next week. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yes.
Okay, very good. EB, you had a question.
Okay, I want to ask if it's okay for us to use our dictionary for the brute force attack.
Do you want to use your own dictionary? Yes. That's a brilliant question. And so what EB is saying here, correct me if I'm wrong, EB, because your password is the third in the list, you're asking if you can use a custom dictionary and move that password down to 15 or whatever, correct?
Yes, that might be one of the reasons, but it's because it's better than for us to go and recreate another admin account in the database.
Yeah.
So if we know our passwords, we can fix it down below
Yep.
when
I
we create our
I
dictionary.
I love that idea. That's a brilliant. I love that idea. I'll show you a quick and easy way to do it as well, so you can follow along with this. If you want to create your own dictionary, you can do the following. I'm going to make a directory for Hydra for brute force. Let's just call it brute force. All right. CD brute force, and then I'm going to do head dash 20 of my RockU, and I'm going to redirect that towards custom dictionary .txt or .dic, whatever you want to call it. And now you've got a custom dictionary. Nano custom dictionary, and then you can remove password, and you can put it down at the bottom of the list. Control O, enter Control X. And of course, because it's Kali, you don't even need to use Nano. Because it's Kali, you can open up something like Mousepad and do it here. Either one is fine. But yeah, I like that. That's a brilliant idea. Thank you for that. Any other questions?